All right, here's the situation. You're in Afghanistan in the Helmand province. Years roughly 2010, 2011. You got a river that's right in front of you, and just beyond those banks, you have taken fire from an enemy combatant. You have finally been given permission to engage the enemy. However, now they are just slightly out of range of your standard infantry rifle, albeit an M4 or an M16, depending on your unit. What do you do about that? Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's where today's rifle and our topic of discussion comes into play. Check out this actual real life combat footage of how the Marines handle this situation.
Looking directly at it.
I missed.
Missed. Went over his left shoulder. Hit him.
Got him.
He's still up.
Tango's down.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We are talking about the Mark 12 Mod 1 or the SPR, depending on the unit nomenclature. Arguably, this is one of the most deadliest rifles of the entire global war on terror. I mean, if you don't believe me, I would normally tell you to go ask that terrorist that just got smoked by this thing, but he's kind of got other problems. So definitely an effective rifle. It really allowed the infantry soldier to get out and be able to go beyond those extended ranges because, as we'll talk about, the combat in Afghanistan was very terrible. So before we get into the story of this rifle, we got to knock some administrative stuff out. So the YouTube algorithm, they don't like me because I talk about guns. They don't like you because you guys watch videos about guns. Let's face it, YouTube is pretty anti-gun. Just is what it is. So do me a favor, help me defeat that algorithm, punch that subscribe button, and when you punch it, you're really punching the algorithm in the face. You're doing me a massive favor in the process of doing it, and you're sticking it to the man by showing them you want to see content like this. Also, guys, if you like this video, again, helping drive the algorithm, I want to hear your comments below. Tell me what you think I got right, what we can kind of talk about. If you used one of these rifles overseas, love to hear your stories. And yeah, we're going to go ahead and dive into this thing because I know you guys are chomping at the bit, and I'm chomping at the bit. Let's talk about this rifle. Let's go over some background context. All right, guys. So unfortunately, there is not a lot of really good literature that I could just go and source for this weapon. I was able to get my hands on a manual, so we are going to get our technical information and the doctrine from this, which is very important. We're also going to link some videos in the description here on other content creators and their videos that kind of gave some light on this. A lot of really good interviews. And then also some written articles as well. So that is where my sources are coming from, and they will be linked in the description. Alrighty, so before we get into the development of the Mark 12, we have to understand why this gun was created and what was the problem that it was solving. And to do that, we have to understand a couple key things here. This is the early initial onset of the war. So first point was we really didn't know what to expect. You know, we invade this country. What are we going to be dealing with? The first thing that we quickly realized was the terrain in Afghanistan sucks. We are talking mountains, ravines, rivers, deserts, harsh weather, wildlife. I mean, this place is just all over it. And then on top of that, we're fighting a very, very experienced enemy. I mean, you got to think about it. The Taliban had fought the Russians in the 80s. Like, fighting is their culture. They've been doing this for thousands and thousands of years. And on top of that, we're fighting them on their home ground. They know the lay of the land. We don't. So all of that is in the favor of the enemy. The big thing that the U.S. had was the technology aspect of it. Now, the Taliban knew this. And so what they would often do was they would engage us at extended ranges. So we're talking 2, 3, 4, 500 meters. And your standard infantry units, they just didn't quite have the technology to engage the enemy. You're talking most of your standard M4, M16s had iron sights. Yeah, there were some units that had optics, mainly red dots. Some people had ACOGs, but those didn't really become popular until later in the war. And if you've ever looked through a set of iron sights at something 300 yards down the road, 300 meters down the road, that silhouette gets really tiny really quick, let alone if it's hiding behind some rocks and it's actually camouflaged. And then on top of that, you're getting shot at. So I think you've painted a picture here that you can see how difficult it is to engage an enemy. Now, the forward units are learning these lessons, and they're learning it on the ground. They're communicating this information to the rear units, and they're like, hey, this is what's going on. This is some tools that you guys need to purchase to help combat this problem. And one of those things was rifle scopes. So those rear units were purchasing standard hunting scopes. Now, another thing you guys got to understand, or my second point in this, is that the supply chain was not what it was later on in the war, where, you know, a unit could go to a specific list of vendors and be like, all right, I need this, 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 this. Voila, I have the tools now. I need to go fight this war. I know what to expect, and these are the tools that I can acquire. So initially, upon outset, the units were given CAL money, or cost of war money, and what they did was they would go and source this equipment for themselves. Now, again, it was a trial by error thing. So these rifle scopes, sure, they were good on a standard deer rifle to go deer hunting with, but they didn't know if these scopes were going to be fragile. Could they withstand the abuse of war? Didn't really know. On top of that, these scopes were very no frills. They didn't have, you know, mil dot reticles. They didn't have external turrets, and a lot of them didn't have the parallax that you needed for long range shooting. If you're a long range shooter, you know how important parallax is. So they're acquiring these scopes and they're taking them overseas. Quickly, the Department of Defense got wind of this and is like, all right, we got to actually figure this problem out. We need to develop something for these guys. And thus, that brings us to the SPR program being born. Okay, the SPR program, what the heck does that stand for? Well, that depends on what branch you were in. It could mean the Special Purpose Receiver, because on the Navy side, it was initially developed as a standalone receiver that you would attach to an existing issued rifle, or it could stand for Special Purpose Rifle, because later the Marine Corps and the Army would issue them as standard rifles, not just the receiver group. So again, doctrine is what dictated the name typically. Now, the history. So the Mark 12 began its life from the SOP Mod Block 1 program. The Department of Defense quickly recognized through earlier testing that the M4 M16 platform was a pretty versatile platform. I mean, just by swapping out a few parts, you could totally change the mission of the gun. You want a shorter gun for close quarters combat, you got a shorter upper receiver group, a CQBR, close quarters battle receiver, which is where the Mark 18 kind of got its development that we, you know, covered in a previous video. So much like that, they're looking at this like, hey, you know, we can add a new receiver group with a free floated barrel to give us consistency and accuracy. Throw a scope on it so we can see what's going on at distance. Now we have accuracy and magnification to shoot what's seeing accurately, maybe suppress it, and voila, here we go. That's the concept. So the Naval Surface Warfare Center, Crane, is what initially took on that gauntlet, and they came up with the SPR receiver, which then kind of became, as with the Mark 18, developed into its own standalone rifle. And that brings us to the Mark 12 Mod 0. Now the Mod 0 we will cover in another video, but to kind of hit the highlights, the major difference between that and our rifle today was it had flip-up sights, had lower rings because it didn't need the high rings like our Mod 1 does, and the big difference was the rail. Now, the Knight's Armament rail was close on the heels of the development of the Mark 12 Mod 0, and thus quickly took over, which is why the Mod 1 became the most common, widely issued variant of the Mark 12 series. Now, why the Knight's rail over the PRI rail? Well, durability kind of came into question a little bit because the PRI rail was carbon fiber, but really it came down to the fact that this thing was a single piece aluminum Picatinny rail. You didn't have to worry about attachments coming loose. You still had the modularity to, you know, throw the broomstick on, throw a bipod on, throw a PEC on for lasers and all that stuff. And then the only other big change they had to make was they raised up the rings on it. So they went with the arms number 22 rings. And then the way the AEM suppressor mounted, or excuse me, the OPS-INC suppressor mounted, they had to move the collar forward just a little bit. They both still had 18-inch barrels, and they both are extremely accurate. Now, the triggers kind of varied a little bit between the two. You had the Knight's triggers in the earlier Mark 12s, and then the Geisley Select Fire triggers came in, which the Geisleys are fantastic. That's what this one has in it. And they kind of experimented with different trigger groupings, so you'll see both triggers in both guns, but they were essentially a two-stage match trigger. So we kind of talked a little bit about the development to our rifle from the Mod 0 to this one. There is another variant, the Mod H, and then the Seal Recce rifle, which also kind of influenced this a little bit. We're not talking about those guns today. Those will get their own videos later down the road. So let's go ahead and look at the doctrine of what this gun was designed to do. We're going to bring the camera up a little bit closer, and then we're going to kind of give you an overview of this rifle. Okay, so what is the Mark 12 Mod 1? Well, the 5.56mm Mark 12 Mod 1 Special Purpose Rifle is a precision 5.56mm NATO gas-operated semi or full auto air-cooled rifle equipped with a 30 or 20 round box magazine. So as you can see here, this is what we've got. So overall views here. So this has a muzzle brake on the end of it that is threaded for the suppressor. The collar butts up against here, creating a gas seal, and this allows this thing, whether it's suppressed or unsuppressed, not to have a point of impact shift, because the suppressor is actually held on in two different spots, which is actually really neat technology for being over 20 years old. Moving back, we have our Douglas. This one's a 1 in 8. They were initially 1 in 7 twist barrels. Got our Mark 12 gas block. We got the Knights free-floating RAS system, free-floating rail adapter. Got the panels, got the broomstick, Harris bipod, and then we got our arms number 22 high rings with the levers, no lever stops. This is the Leupold Mark IV, but it's the wrong Mark IV. These were typically issued with 2.5 to 8s or 2.5 to 10s that were illuminated. I sadly don't have one of those. Those are very expensive. M16 A1 profile lower. Got our upper receiver, and then they had a variety of pistol grips and a variety of stocks. This one has the A2, but a lot of the times you would see pictures of them with like the SOP mod stock, etc. So that is an overall close-up view of our rifle and the overall specs of it. Let's go ahead and talk about what Doctrine said its effectiveness was and why they went this route. All right, so we covered the development and we got an overall look of our rifle. We do briefly need to talk about ammo before moving on to what the military expected this thing to do. What was its capabilities? So I'm not going to cover the history of the Mark 262 Mod 1 ammo in this video because I already covered it in the Mark 18 video. So if you want to see the history on it, go check that video out. But basically an overview is the Mark 262 Mod 1 or Mod C, depending on who you talk to, is a 77 grain Sierra Match King bowtail hollow point, so a match bullet, that had a cantilever in it. And the reason it had the cantilever was it was crimped so it waterproofed the case basically and made it a lot more robust in a combat environment. These rounds were loaded to match standards and were way better than the standard M855 projectiles that was standard in all the M4 M16s. If you've ever shot that stuff out at the range, the green tip stuff, makes the rifle basically a 2 to 3 to 4 MOA gun. You can't take an accurized rifle and put crap ammo in it and expect it to shoot well. The rifle has to be issued with good quality match ammo, and that's what the Mark 262 ammo was. Alrighty, so we covered the ammunition that the rifle uses. Now, what is the Mark 12's capabilities? What can we expect it to do at a variety of distances? Well, according to this manual, they give you two different ranges. So they give you a max effective point range and a max effective area range. Now, for my civilians that aren't too familiar with that, you're probably like, what the heck does that mean? Your point targets are basically, if I can see it, I can shoot it reliably. Your area range is, okay, the cartridge is starting to be limited by environmental factors, whether it's wind or velocities or whatever, all that sciencey stuff that makes bullets fly. Your group is basically a much wider spread. You can't reliably hit these targets, but you can still influence the battlefield by shooting at the enemy. So basically, you're shooting. If you can hit them, great. You hit them, cool, bonus kill. But really what you're trying to do is either deny the enemy territory or influence them to move, so your buddies that are over there that are in a better position, you'll funnel them towards that so they can kill and destroy the enemy. That's basically the concept of area fire. So those range distances are, point is 600 meters, so you can reliably take down a threat out to 600 meters. Your area effective range is 800 meters. So that's the capabilities. Let's actually see this in action. So we're going to go over to the range and I'm going to shoot this rifle at a variety of distances. And I think you're going to be surprised at how effective it really is.
Oh yeah, got that. That's stupid easy at this distance. All right, let's hit that 10-inch plate. A little bit low. Ooh. Oh, got it. Got it. Oh, that was low. Oh, wind picked up. There it is. Oh, low. Yeah. Got it. Got it again. Nope. Nope. Last two missed, but we got a pretty good string. If there was no wind, this would be doable, but keep in mind that is a 2/3 size dipstick target. We're still making fairly consistent hits. So are we in the area denial roll? Yeah, but is it still lethal? I wouldn't want to be standing downrange. So let's go on to our final length. 845. Oh, way over. Oh, almost. Oh, we're right there. There it is. Nope. Got him. No, over to the right. Got him. Dude, that's unbelievable. All right, guys, so that was 845. We got some consistent hits, as you saw there. That's pretty crazy. So let's let this can cool off, and I'll see you guys back in the gun room, and we'll finish out with our final thoughts here.
All right, the Mark 12 in action. So to kind of close this out real quick before we talk about how she shot, let's kind of close out the history a little bit. So the SPR program was born in 2002, where this gun was developed and went through the many variations. It officially was ended in 2017, and the rifle was phased out. Now, the reason why was now we started to see, different battle rifles. The M24s were being, widely fielded in the units. The 308 just does a better job at more extended ranges. And then this gun kind of was phased out. Was still very effective and very influential, and definitely was deadly overseas, especially in Afghanistan. The rifle did see service with both the U.S. Army, the Marine Corps, and the Navy. And, again, many variations were developed. So many different units used them, all the way from SOCOM all the way down to your conventional units. Now, how did the thing shoot? Well, all the point distances out to the 600-meter mark, very easy, very consistent. As long as you knew your dope to kind of get your elevation up right, took account for the wind. It was very easy. Light recoiling, very easy to get fast follow-up shots. And if you're on the gun and no one else is spotting for you, it's very easy to tell where your hits are. I was able to self-correct and self-diagnose all throughout the shooting footage that you guys saw. The area targets, I was blown away that I was able to make those hits at 845. Not that the gun's not capable or me not capable. I picked the absolute worst day to shoot on. You'll see in some B-roll right now of the cedar trees from that 845 mark. They were just blowing all over the place. The wind was consistently at 18 to 22 miles an hour with gusts up to 25 to 30 miles an hour. So it was all over the place. But you saw once I took account for the wind and got it walked in, you saw that it was very effective as an area weapon. Like I was, throwing rounds within 6 feet of the target. You would see the dirt kind of kicking up, and I was able to make hits. So would that influence an enemy combatant? Absolutely, it would. They would not be having a good day downrange. So it did its job, and it did its job very well. So that is pretty much going to be the end of today's video, guys. I really enjoyed making this, building this rifle out for you guys, and then kind of talking about the history and researching it. I hope that I was able to do justice to this story. There's just not a lot of information out on this, so I wanted to put a video out and tell the story as best as I possibly could, because this rifle's iconic and it definitely deserves that story to be told. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Leave your comments below. If you use this weapon overseas, please share your stories down below. We want to get those documented. I want to hear it. If you guys got any improvements or any other knowledge, drop it in the comments below for me. I really greatly appreciate the feedback. All right, guys, I'm Chris Smith from Marksmanship Past and Present. And remember, your right to self-defense is self-maintained. Guys, study the history, appreciate the Second Amendment, defend your families, defend your country. We'll see you guys in the next video. I love you guys.